Guys, the American dream was built upon the pretense that those who had the opportunities, the capability, and the will achieve something that most, even within the same age group or demographic, in the same region, obviously being in the country of America, strive to get. Getting the American dream, right? The 3 or 4 bed house, fence, 2.5 kids, whatever that means. A dog, I guess, is a sense of security or a best friend. Swaddy Cup. And then being able to retire, I guess, at normal retirement age is maybe still the American dream. But when I think about what all that means and what all that comes with, right, the American dream is masked as consuming more debt or taking over more debt, being responsible for more liability, being desensitized to classism, and understanding that sacrifice is the only thing that matters in your life. Sacrifice. That means sacrifice your life value for time, living wage, right? So a lot of people in 2026 are still trying to achieve that, right? You know, the house, buying the house. I don't know about the marriage part, and I'm not even sure about relationship part, honestly. You know, I just think people just want to buy the house, you know, over getting married or being in a long-term / committed relationship. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who don't even want to buy a house, whether they can't afford it or they've understood the pretense behind buying a house, right? Debt, liability, right? It's a shaky market. It's a frugal market with sellers having options in today's time to turn around an investment if they want to do that. Being in a primary situation, right, still can bring insecurities or insufficiencies, unsureties about property taxes, insurance, and interest rates outside of not having secure income because of mass layoffs and the generation of AI, right? So that's why a lot of people aren't buying a home. Or they look to buy a home and they cancel the sale. That's increased also. So, you know, overall it's shaky, right? You know, maybe outside of all that, it's shaky. People are having less kids, you know. I think people will still just get the dog, right? If they rent something, they can rent something that's fenced already. So the American dream now looks like something else that I think everybody's still trying to pinpoint. But they never talked about how the American dream is based off of contingency, right? It's not based off necessarily what you can do for your country and how fast you can climb your corporate ladder or how long you can stay in your job. There's so much uncertainty now, right? There's so much variables that bring that uncertainty, you know? So think about that, you know, like really, you know, having a family is a liability. The more dependents you have, right? You know, if you claim your credit, your taxes, and you could, you know, it's supposed to be building a legacy. But if I'm single and I make $5,000 a month and I have a family, right, whether I'm married or not, and I have 2 kids and I make the same amount, well, the person who's single is in a better position you know, from an individual to an income ratio, right? Cut it off. The person who's single doesn't directly and 100% have or make more money, right? On paper, they look better. They have the opportunity to have more discretionary income, right? Compared to having 3 other people, right? That liability, right? You know, so, yeah, you know, people are starting to think about that more, right? The odds of going into 2026 being single compared to being in a family, right? You know, it's more in the favor of someone who's single. And I think that's every year. I think that's just, you know, that's just math. But there's a workaround, there's a will to do everything, right? So this is not to discourage people from not having kids or not being married, you know. I'm just pointing out that things have changed with how we see with, you know, attaining physical things that looks like it should be a standard, right? A community or a country standard. And whether people are trying to achieve that or not, it is not a standard anymore. Or at least it's watering down, you know? For me, I know a lot of people who have a lot of kids or who's wanting more kids, right? And they're in different positions in life, you know, with relationship status, with finances, things of that nature. So people are still doing these things, right? People are still having kids. People are still buying homes, right? People are still attempting, and staying on their job long term, right? Although SSI, you know, can look shaky, right? They're already up the age for, you know, maximum SSI, or at least they're talking about it, you know. Taxes is always going to be the death of us, you know. And now, being in a place like America, you know, with striving and equity takes time. That means I have to get older to see my equity, to see the fruits of my labor. Well, I got to be healthy enough. And most things you eat, it's not even healthy for you. Or you're in a sedentary lifestyle because that sacrifice. You got to put in time to get that house, put in time to retire. I mean, you got to work 12, 13, 15, 18 hours a day. And that includes sitting down a lot. So there's all these variables outside of social injustices and, you know, and economic, you know, strife, like, you know, all this other stuff that can kill you on the way, even if it's not physically yet. It can mentally, emotionally, and obviously financially, even spiritually kill you on the way. You know, getting to that American dream is tough, if it's even possible. So you got to be healthy to get it. You got to be alive to get it, you know? Think about that stuff, man. Like, I really look between the lines with things. When people just say stuff, I don't take things, or I'm attempting to not take things for face value just because you said something. I got to look at what it actually means. Like, I got to look at the reason why we decide to actually have kids just because people have kids, right? Not how we have kids or why it's hard not to have kids. Like, just what is the pretense around having kids? You know, what is the pretense of staying on a job, right? What is the pretense of being in a certain religion if the overall goal of religion is to produce isolation and separation? It's another form of classism and indirect control. Again, in my opinion, like, there's just certain things that we all do just because it's traditional or generational. And that's the same thing with the American dream. I won't go down this rabbit hole. That's the same thing with the American dream. Like, you know, why are we ascertaining all this stuff? For us. And it has to be subjective. You know, I'm talking about for people where, like, if your goal is to retire early, then think about when or if you should have kids, right? You know, if your goal is to travel more, right? You know, then think about being in a primary residence where you end up paying a balance bat that includes 25 to 38% interest after 30 years. I mean, you think about this stuff. I'm here to help us all think about stuff.